Thank you for joining us today for our Healthy Living webinar. I am very excited to have Chad with us from Gaylord Community Funeral Home and Cremation Service to talk about pre-planning for life. I will let Chad take it away, give his introduction and presentation. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. As Sydney said, my name is Chad Craker. I am a licensed funeral director here at Gaylord Community Funeral Home. And I have been with Gaylord, the funeral home, for almost a year now. And I'm one of three funeral directors that are here. So, um, what I'm going to present today is my full-time role at the funeral home is what um, industry knowledge is advanced planning or pre-planning. And so one of the things that I do about once a month is we have what are called advertised community education programs. And we send out invites to different zip codes in the area. And then usually it's a luncheon or a dinner. And I present this information and then we allow people to ask questions. And then really the goal at the end of the presentation is to set one-on-one appointment times with the attendees and then answer specific questions to them, for them, their family, and whatnot. So as we're kind of going through the presentation, if you have some general questions, you can certainly ask them, just raise your hand or pop it into the chat. But I will have some time at the end for you guys to ask questions. And then just bear in mind that this is uh, a presentation that is usually done to the general public, just to kind of get them informed, mainly at like a 50,000 foot view about what advanced planning is, why it's a good idea. And then, as I said, the goal is to really set a time for them to meet. So I will kind of go through some of the slides because you'll see here as we start, a lot of people come to these events or want to talk about advanced planning, but the thought about talking about a mortality or end of life does present a lot of anxiety. I just did one here this past Tuesday, and a lady came, she had signed up a few weeks ago, and in that time, her husband had been placed on hospice. So she was pretty emotional. I was surprised but pleased that she still came to the event. And then we ended up setting her up to have a conversation with one of the funeral directors here at the funeral home. So my role here is, helping people. If you kind of think of a timeline of at least 6 months, so if it's more imminent of a death, we would certainly set them up with an at-need funeral director. Um, but my role is really 6 months and out. So we start with some trivia, and usually I have some candy bars, so I apologize, no candy bars for anybody today. But which actress had full-time guards at her funeral? She was worried about her casket. The correct answer is Joan Rivers, which you can probably suspect from Joan. Who was the famous singer who kind of started having the celebratory music at his funeral? That was Louis Armstrong. What individual holds the record for having the most attendees to their funeral? This one it's the Pope, but they also count when they processed with his casket. Um, People were like 15 to 20 deep on the street, and they estimate there was about 4.5 million people that watched his casket go by. So um, that he gets the award for that. But I do want to touch about Princess Diana. I always share this because it's just goes to the importance of having your individual plan in place. So when Princess Diana passed away, obviously we all recall that she was chased by paparazzi and it was very, tragic and unexpected. Well, and she was young, so she had nothing planned as far as her funeral. And of course, she was kind of in a divorce situation from the king, or I guess he was prince at the time. Um, but when she passed away, the queen mother mandated that anybody that was in the royal family that was receiving money on a monthly basis from the royal family had to have their pre-plan in place. And if they did not, then they were not going to receive their money. So she kind of had seen what happened with Princess Di and just how tragic that was on the family, how what a toll it took on the family. And she said, we're not doing that again. And interestingly, when the queen there's a documentary on it. They would actually twice a year practice her death. And she was on an island a lot of times. So they had just different scenarios. And, but yeah, it's a pretty cool documentary. I mean, if you're into that thing. And she holds the record for the most expensive funeral. It was $153 million. Most of that was in security. But this is just kind of a little bit what we talk about. We do share a little bit of the history about the funeral home. We talk about my story. We start to get you to think about, man, if something happened, what would I do? Common reasons why people pre-plan. We talk about how we accomplish that. And then we talk about a time period that everybody goes through when a death occurs. It's called the acute loss period. And then you'll see that at the end I usually go around and schedule time for us to meet with people. So the Gaylord Community Funeral Home, we've been around for 14 years, going on 14 years. We are directly across from the Gaylord Community or the Gaylord Hospital, Otsego Hospital. And we're very community involved. So Joe Messenger is the owner. Rachel Smith is the other funeral director, and then we have other staff, but we're very involved with Veterans Affairs and just some of the different churches around town. Um, we you know, Joe always says, that if it feels right, we're going to do it. So he's very giving with the services. Our service packages are very complete. So we try and present a really good service for as cost effective pricing as we can. And if anybody wants to come by and look at the funeral home anytime, you can certainly come and we'd be happy to give you a tour of it. But um, my story. So, this is a picture of my mom and dad, and this was actually taken on their 35th wedding anniversary. And in late 2002, my mom, I was not in funeral service at the time, but my mom was not feeling well, and she was having pain in her lower right groin area. And so she called her doctor and said, "Hey, I think I need to come in." And it was kind of getting towards Halloween and the holidays. And he said, "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing. It's probably a hernia. Let's just get through the holidays and then we'll get you in." And things kind of progressed. And Thanksgiving she wasn't feeling well, and certainly between Christmas and New Year's she was pretty sick. And so she got in. They couldn't get her in until after the first of the year. Long story short, that pain that she was experiencing was that she had stage 4 uterine cancer, and the cancer had escaped the uterine walls and was constricting the appendix. And so she had surgery mid-March and started chemo. And things were progressing really well. The chemo was doing what it was supposed to be doing. And, we didn't think about she was going to pass away at all. We were just 100% consumed with getting my dad's wife, my mom, grandma better. And, within about a week, things turned. And ultimately, she ended up passing away on September 28th. So after surgery, she really only lasted about 5 months. And so, I'm sure we all have the history or the experience of, a death one passing away. Um, you're tired, the emotions, kind of we talk about, it's almost like somebody flips a light switch off in our brain and we're not able to make decisions, remember things. And that was the case with me. I was on a work trip. I was in Hawaii and I was flying back. And when I landed, my brother called me and he's like, "Hey, when you coming out to mom's?" And I said, "Well, at this point, I was in Grand Rapids. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on um, Saturday." And he said, "Well, you should come now." And so we got out there, and she was able to recognize me and my family, but she did pass away about 10 hours later. So all of a sudden, I've been up for 72 hours, and about 3 hours after my mom passing, I'm sitting in a funeral home trying to make decisions about what she would want for her service is what would, obviously be something that we would want to remember and celebrate her life with. So, it's something that we always don't want to think about, but it's, something inevitably that is going to happen to all of us. And so, if that happened to you and nothing was pre-planned, would you know what to do? We're going to talk about some of the information that's needed. So, if you individually work on your own pre-plan, or if you share with anyone that you're working with the importance of advanced planning, the next few slides are the ones that we're going to talk about, which is why advanced planning is so important. Um, so when a death occurs and no pre-planning has been done, um, there's anywhere from 75 to 125 different items that need to be addressed within the first 18 hours following a death. And that is information that the funeral home needs to begin the process of getting certified copies of the death certificate. We need to notify Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Um, we need to work on service details. We need to coordinate with where those services will take place, funeral home, churches. We need to reach out to the cemetery. We need to order the vault, the casket, the urn. So if it's a veteran, there's, DD 214 paperwork that we have to get. So this is stuff that we need pretty immediately. And we don't have time. I mean, we have time, but the family absolutely has to work on it right away. And if you think about if someone were to pass away Sunday night, Monday morning, normally, services are going to be Thursday night, visitation Thursday night, service Friday morning, or we could have, Friday, Saturday. But usually that takes place within a week. So it's a pretty condensed time. It's a time that, one, you're, riding the grief roller coaster. Um, your emotions are all over the place, and you're really not able to concentrate and make good decisions, sound decisions. That's why the pre-planning is so important, is because we do have time. I mean, when I meet with families, sometimes they walk in and they know exactly what they want. Other times, it's an exploratory first meeting. They take some information, we meet again, and we're able to take the time to make sure that we have all of the information as they wish for it to take place when their service comes. So, common reasons why people pre-plan their funerals. The first one, and probably the most important one, is peace of mind. So you just know that everything's taken care of. When I meet with people, I tell them it's probably best if you just take care of things. You know your family, you know your children, you know what they would need. Um, People think that 90% of what we do at the funeral home is for the deceased. when in fact 90% of what we do is for the survivors. So that's family members, friends, coworkers. Um, but if we can get everything in place and on file at the funeral home, it just provides great peace of mind to people that do it. Decisions that would burden your family later can be handled now. As I said, all of this information is about you. You are able to just recall it. We don't ask really any crazy questions. So, date of birth, social security number, where you were born, what you did for work, highest level of education. So this is all the information that the state requires the funeral home to provide to complete the funeral home or the family side of the death certificate. The other side, of course, is the medical, which is date, time, and reason for death. So um, we gather that, we hold that on file at the funeral home, and then we work with the medical care professional to get the other side at the time of death. So another important one is no doubts about what the funeral or disposition is. So that the main dispositions are a traditional casket burial or cremation. Um, Green burial is something that is starting to come on and be talked about in Michigan. Body composting is another one. But as a funeral director, we've all had the families that came in. One sibling thought that dad wanted to have a full veteran service, traditional casket burial in a cemetery. He gets sick at the end of his life. He feels like he's being a burden, so he shares with another child that, um, don't make a big fuss when I pass away. Just cremate me and scatter my ashes or cremated remains. Well, those two conversations were never reconciled between the children. So when dad passes away, they each come into the funeral home thinking they knew exactly what dad wants. And I know in 2012, I served a family that this exact scenario took place. And I know both siblings, and neither of them have talked to each other since 2012 because of this exact uh, argument that they had. So if we can have something on file at the funeral home, it does, I mean, it does, I can't 100% guarantee that it's not going to happen, but it does eliminate a lot of that stuff, especially as more and more people have blended families, it's even more so important to have something on file at a funeral home. And I'll just mention that it is very important to have a will, but a will is generally not read for 4 to 7 weeks after a death. And so, as we talked about earlier, usually within about a week to 10 days, funeral services have taken place. So, having your information in a will is not the best place to have it. So, allows loved ones to have a positive grieving experience. And what we mean by that is that if you have a pre-planned, prepaid service, the arrangement conference at the time of death is significantly shorter than if you have to come in and kind of start from scratch. So, in some of our funeral services, it's not even required that the funeral or the family come into the funeral home immediately following a death. We can actually do some paperwork through DocuSign. But the positive grieving experience is talking about not spending 4 or 5 hours at a funeral home, but it's in the comfort of your own home, surrounded by friends and family, and you're, grieving with loved ones. And then the last one here is ensures that funeral costs have been addressed. So we know that costs are going up well, they're doubling about every 8 to 10 years right now. And when I sit down with people, we discuss their arrangements and we specifically talk about what they would want for their services. And then I provide them with a very detailed estimate of what those services would cost today in 2026 dollars. And you have some options going forward, to lock those costs in through prepayment. So we actually have this is a representation of our digital platform that we use now. And so it's called the Final Wishes Organizer. And in here, we gather all of the biographical information that we need for your family. So, as I said, your current address, where you were born, what you did for work, highest level of education. We talk about veterans. We gather next of kin information with phone numbers so we know who to reach out. One of the things that I have to do is when I meet with a husband and a wife, I have to kind of look at all of the different contingencies that may happen. Um, a car accident where both spouses are killed, or which is more common, when the first spouse passes away, obviously the surviving spouse is there to help with service arrangements and any information that we need. But when the second spouse passes away, um, who are those family members that are going to be helping the funeral home complete all of the documents that we need in decision making? Special instructions. So it assists your family with the many details you want in personalizing your funeral arrangements, final arrangements. So do you want um, certainly, we start with traditional burial versus cremation, but uh, do you want to have a visitation? Do you want to have a funeral service? Is that here at the funeral home, or do you have a church home that you would want to go to? So we want to make sure that we have that. If you are going to be buried in a cemetery, I try to get cemetery plot information, and if not, we would talk about what cemetery that you would go into. Funeral service requests. So these are, growing up, um, when my grandparents passed away, it was 2 days a wake, a funeral service, and then graveside committal. Everybody was buried traditionally with a casket in a cemetery. Well, now cremation is, about 50% of services, and really there's no two funerals that are the same anymore. So we want to make sure that we have things that would be important to you. Um, you know, doves being released. We don't do too many balloon releases anymore, but do you want to have a bagpiper? We've had people that were huge wildflower lovers, and you can get the cards that you plant the card, and then the wildflowers come up. So anything that would be important to the loved one to make sure that it was personalized. We just had a service here at Gaylord. She was a huge euchre player. And so the family brought in about 100 packs of cards, decks of cards, and everybody that attended the service could have a deck of cards in the woman's honor. So just really cool, something to personalize it. And it makes it meaningful. Also, we do picture boards and we do memorial videos. Um, that's important because, or if you are known for, woodworking or photography, you can bring all of that into the funeral home, or the family can. And it's really important for two reasons. One, it provides a level of familiarity for family members, but it's also a concentration point so people can come in, and it's kind of a conversation starter. So a lot of people don't know what to do or how to act, what to say at a funeral. And so, having these personalizations allow people to kind of congregate and break the ice, so to speak. So military records. So if we have any veterans, our staff gets all of the funeral burial benefits that are available to veterans. So whether that be a cemetery property in a state or national veteran cemetery, we get the flag. Of course, we coordinate opening and closing of the grave. Military honors, so that would be taps, presentation of the flag, and then a gun salute. So all of that is done by the funeral home, and we do that at no extra charge for the veteran. And any veteran that wants to be buried in a cemetery, the closest one right now is Holly, and we would transport the veteran down to the cemetery at no extra cost. So that's something that we do to honor our veterans. And then, of course, emergency contacts. So In the vital statistics, we take next of kin, so children. If you don't have children, usually we try and grab nieces and nephews just because we want to have some age difference between those that would be helping. But emergency contacts could be if a death occurred elsewhere. Do you have a family friend that we could reach out to and maybe have them go check on the house? Um, Sometimes we have estate attorneys, you know, financial planners, clergy members. So once again, just as complete an information that we can have on file to just assist your family at the time of death.
Chad, is that Final Wishes organizer, is that an online tool that they can find on your website, or is that something that you guys provide them when they sit down for that like first appointment with you?
We do. That's a great question. So thank you. Yeah. So that is something that I do with people.
Okay.
We used to, so the actual physical final wishes organizer, we used to mail those out to people. And what we found was one of two things happened. One, nothing. So we were sending out a lot of these final wishes organizers. Or if somebody did start to work on it, we were answering so many questions because one of the things that we do send out is the general price list, which is a listing of all of the services that we provide to families. And so people were opening that general price list up and they were just getting overwhelmed. So we do set up one-on-one appointments for people. There's no cost or obligation to go past the pre-planning process, but we do ultimately give them some knowledge as to what their funeral charges would be. So,
Okay.
yep, they get to meet with me free.
Perfect.
So, yep,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. So, once again, what is your why? So in kind of relation to this slideshow, I'm presenting to people that have responded positively to a free lunch, but for getting information about pre-planning. So um, when I meet and do these lunches, I talk about this time, which is called the acute loss period. And you probably are familiar with it, maybe have not heard of it in this terminology or that the acute loss period, but I'm going to explain this 7-step process that everybody goes through when a death occurs. Okay. And so in the middle of this circle, you'll see that it says begin healing. And that's what our role at the funeral home is. Once again, we take care of the deceased, but most of what we do is to help the survivors with their new normal. So that's, life without the deceased with us. And what I normally do is I am the person that has passed away in this scenario. So you'll see along the outside, it says emotional needs, and then along the bottom, it says relational needs, and then on the left hand, it says spiritual needs. And so what I usually do is say, your phone rings and you pick it up, and the person on the line says, "Hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but Chad Kraker passed away last night." And you receiving the phone call are like, "Oh my gosh, I knew he was sick, or it's so sudden, or whatever." However that conversation goes, but that's that's how we hear or we are make known of the passing of a loved one. We hear it, on the phone, or we run into somebody. And usually that conversation ends with, "Well, do you know when the service is going to be?" And they say, "No, I just got called from the family. They haven't even gone into the funeral home yet. But as soon as I hear something, I will let you know." And so when that first phone conversation ends, what we do is we call those people that are closest to us and we share that information. And those conversations end with the same thing, which is, "Do you know when the service is going to be?" And that's really code for two things. One is the shock of hearing that someone passed away. Oftentimes, we need the ability to see the loved one um, to get closure. So, seeing is the first part of that. Is we want to uh, pay final respects to the loved one. The other one is that grief does love company. I mean, I know that that's a cliche, but when we're hurting, we do want to gather with friends and console each other. So that's very important to set that time. So these first three, the emotional needs, happen pretty automatically and they happen over and over. So if you think back to, any time that you've heard that someone's passed away, more than likely you have kind of, heard the news, shared the news, and then discussed when the service was going to be, whether it be at the funeral home or a church or whatever. So the relational needs are really best fulfilled with a memorial visitation. So this is often the first time that we gather as a group once we've heard about a death. Um, the first three happen automatically, but the next four take a little bit of planning. Okay. And so there are people that study, funeral service and visitations and funeral service and all of that sort of stuff. And they have determined that about 70% of the people that come to a wake or a visitation did not have a personal relationship with the deceased. They are there to support the spouse, children, grandchildren, coworkers, friends of friends, or just casual acquaintances. So, um, even though we gather with a lot of people, we connect with a very few. And, if you've ever experienced a death, those connections, those close connections are the people that, are going to reach out and make sure that we're doing okay. During that first week, they're the ones that bring way too much food to the house. Um, they're the ones that are going to call and ask if they can help with anything, running errands, or doing whatever. So it's also kind of the first opportunity that the family has to kind of see what impact the death of the loved one has had on the community. And I meet with families and they say, I don't think very many people are going to show up. And some of the most meaningful visitations that I've had have been some of the smallest. So size doesn't matter. It's really the gathering and the connection that's important. And it really kind of provides a base for the family to kind of to set their feet, because tomorrow generally is going to be the funeral service, or service itself. Um, it can have a religious connotation, but it does not have to. We've had celebrations of life that have not had any religion, so it's really what is important to the family. But the reflection is really twofold. It's first and foremost what the impact and the role of the deceased had on our life. So we kind of, reminisce about what they meant to us. And secondly, we kind of take a personal inventory of our own life. And are we, if we've set goals for ourselves, are we there? Do we need to make, some course corrections, or maybe we're right where we're supposed to be, and that just an affirmation of, the loved one had been a positive influence and we're doing well. Um, and we get to move on. And then the celebration is, we're not talking like Fourth of July firework time type stuff, but um, it's collation, it's a luncheon afterwards. Usually we start to see some smiles. The crazy stories about Uncle Ted come out. And this is where we get a little bit of wind beneath our wings to kind of to help us propel down the next couple weeks, as we begin our grief journey. So ironically, my son unfortunately had a young golden retriever puppy pass away. And I was shocked. Our family went through this exact seven step process. So sometimes we love our pets more than some family members, but it was really kind of crazy to me to see this happen for a dog. So as I said, there's two different aspects of what I do. So basically, up until this point, we've been talking about pre-planning or advanced planning. But this is now where, based on what our conversation has been, uh, we're going to show you exactly what costs would be based on your funeral wishes, whether that be a traditional burial or cremation. So, once we get that estimate done, individuals have an option of locking in costs through payment today. And right off the bat, one of the questions I get is, well, what if Gaylord Community Funeral Home goes out of business? Or what if I move? You're 100% covered um, for two reasons. One, we guarantee the costs today. So if you pay today in 2026, no matter when you pass away, and no matter where costs have increased to, and remember, once again, costs double about every 8 to 10 years, your family will not pay more money at the time of death. So if you pay today, your family does not pay more even in 2050, because the money goes into a number two is the funds go into a funeral insurance policy in your name or the loved one's name. So the benefit to you is costs are guaranteed. It's transferable to anywhere in the United States, and they invest the money safely, and the total growth of the policy comes to the funeral home at the time of death. We also include with all of our traditional casket burials and cremation service packages what's called out of area protection. So this is if a death were to occur more than 75 miles away from home and we had to employ the use of another funeral home, all of the costs and logistics of that death occurring elsewhere for any reason would be covered by this out of area protection. When I meet with people and I come up with a total, sometimes it's what was expected, sometimes it's pretty shocking to people, and they don't have the full amount to pay at that time. So we do offer structured payments over time. Um, you can pay it off in 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. There's structured payments set to come out automatically. Um, we offer, excuse me, 90 days, same as cash. And the protection during the payment period. So if you are making payments on your funeral service and you were to pass away, your family would get the entire services and details that were pre-planned for, and all remaining payments would be forgiven. So, for instance, if you chose a 10-year plan and you made a year and a half of payments and a death occurred, your family gets the entire service, and all, 8.5 years of payments are forgiven. It is paid for by the funeral insurance company. So, um, I always tell people there is, I have never heard a compelling reason to not pre-plan and pre-fund, other than, people just don't want to talk about death. But the amazing advantage of doing a pre-plan is, when I look at my history of doing funeral service, families that have pre-planned versus those that have not, um, their grief journey over that first week is pretty light and day. It's pretty amazing how much lower stress it is. And how much they have advanced with their grief in a positive way. So, and this is just where we talk about when I'm meeting with people, we all know that costs are going up. I mean, cost of gas now, I just coming into town today was, over $5 a gallon. Um, I just heard that the average monthly car payment in the United States is $780 a month. And, I'm pretty sure you can't buy a house for 392,000. So, um, it's something that you're going to have to pay for at some point, or somebody is. Most financial planners, I work with quite a few of them because we're always sharing documents and information. Most financial planners will tell you that prepaying your funeral service is, one of the most important things that you can do. We plan for, you know, college, we plan for retirement. Um, it's just as important to, we plan for weddings. It's just as important, and sometimes even more important to plan for your funeral, because it is the last gift of love that you will give your family. So, the out of area protection is important. Um, it's a one-time payment, a lifetime membership, so you don't have to make yearly or monthly membership fees. You get a wall membership card. It's worldwide coverage. So I did have to get a gentleman back from Tel Aviv, Israel. That was very interesting to see how this process worked. It was absolutely smooth. Um, there's no age limit, there's no health questions, there's no deductible. So you pay this, and no matter what it costs to get your body back to our funeral home, it's covered in full. So um, and then what we would normally do is we would release for lunch. And then when they come back, we talk to them about making a scheduled time to meet one-on-one. And yeah, so that's really the presentation. So I guess I'll open it up to anyone that would have any questions about any of the information that I shared. But thank you.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recordings in case anyone does have any specific questions.